He's been granted bail, but he's far from walking free. Wikileaks founder Julian Assange remains behind bars this evening as Swedish authorities appeal against the decision by a London judge to grant him bail.
Mr Assange is fighting extradition to Sweden to face sexual assault allegations. His lawyer, Mark Stevens, says the case is turning into a show trial.
Finally, after 2 hours, we've heard that the Swedes won't abide by the umpire's decision, and they want to put Mr Assange through yet more trouble, more expense, more hurdles. They clearly will not spare any expense but to keep Mr Assange in jail. This is really turning into a show trial, and we will be in court again within the next 48 hours. They haven't done us the courtesy of yet telling us when we will be in court, and as soon as we do, that information will undoubtedly be put out across the wires so that you can be abreast of it. But it's an unfortunate state of affairs, given that we were obviously very relieved for Mr Assange a few hours ago that the Swedes have taken this action, but given the history of persecution of Mr Assange, it's perhaps not surprising.
That clearly infuriated Mark Stevens there. Now, another member of Julian Assange's legal team is Jennifer Robinson, who joins us now from London. Jennifer Robinson, thanks for making time on what's obviously been a busy afternoon for you. Take us through what actually happened in the courtroom today.
Well, District Judge Riddle came to, in our view, the correct decision in granting bail for Mr Assange. He was confident. He reiterated the reasons that he gave last week and determined that, in fact, as we had submitted all along, that Julian is not a flight risk. He was satisfied with the sureties and the security that we were able to provide to the court, and decided that he is best placed outside of prison so he can properly defend this case. We agree with that decision, and we think it shows that the confidence that Julian has placed in the British justice system as having a tradition of liberty and in the common law was proven to be correct. What we've seen is the Swedish authorities appeal the decision, and it just goes to show that this is a continuing persecution. What were the grounds given by the Swedes for that appeal? They say, we've only been given very brief grounds. They say that the judge erred in his conclusion that Mr Assange would surrender himself to the court, and have even said that no conditions would satisfy them on bail. So this is outrageous. Mr Assange has complied all along with both the Swedish authorities and the English authorities. I notified the English police more than 6 weeks ago that Mr Assange was here and that he was willing to cooperate if and when any arrest warrant was communicated. When it was communicated, they told us, we cooperated, we voluntarily surrendered, and we have offered numerous conditions. The fact that they think that he would somehow abscond is absolutely outrageous and was accepted by the judge today. So what we're seeing is the Swedish authorities refusing to accept the decision of an umpire. And where does it go from here? We heard Mark Stevens referring to Julian Assange staying behind bars for at least another 48 hours. Has another court date, another court hearing been scheduled as yet? Not yet. We're still waiting to hear from the court exactly when it'll be determined, but the court, any appeal has to be heard within 48 hours. So we're waiting to hear back from the court as to exactly when it will be scheduled. I'd say it's likely tomorrow afternoon or the following morning. Now, was there some trouble expressed about raising the $200,000 surety that the judge demanded for Julian Assange's bail? Well, of course, Wikileaks and Julian himself is in significant difficulties. We had a legal defence fund set up in a Swiss bank account which was frozen just the day before he was taken into arrest. So there's a real difficulty with funds because of the pressure put on Wikileaks and our donation funds through MasterCard and Visa and PayPal. All of those accounts have been frozen, including his own personal account in Switzerland. So we're having a real difficulty getting those funds together. You've obviously seen Julian Assange close up. How's he holding up? He was obviously very pleased by the judge's decision, which we believe was the correct one, that he has always submitted to the jurisdiction of this court and that he's very willing to cooperate. He wants to clear his name. So he was pleased that he'd be able to come out and start to address the very defamatory allegations that have been circulating since he's been in prison, and to get to the bottom of these allegations and get shot of them once and for all. So he's obviously frustrated by the decision of the prosecutor to appeal, but is not surprised. The way in which this matter has been handled has been outrageous from start to beginning. from beginning to end, rather. And we see this as just another breach of his human rights. The Swedish prosecutor is seeking to keep him in solitary confinement without charge, ongoing, and it's a key breach of his human rights.
What conditions is he facing in jail? What sort of contact do you have with him? Does his friends and relatives have with him?
Well, we've had great difficulty organising visits with him. I've only had two about 1 hour long visits with him since he was taken into custody last Tuesday, which is of course appallingly inadequate in order to prepare for the bail application today and for the appeal tomorrow or the next day. He hasn't had any social visits yet. He has had several visits from consular officials, but otherwise he's completely cut off from the outside world. He has restricted access to the telephone. He's only managed to make, I think, 2 very short phone calls since going into prison. His mail is censored, and it was raised in court today. Time magazine, who he has been leading the polls for Time Person of the Year, they sent him a copy of a cover with his face on it, and the prison wouldn't let him have that magazine. So he's under censorship, he's under 24-hour surveillance, there's a CCTV camera in his cell, so it's incredibly uncomfortable. We have to remember that this is a man who has committed no crime. The allegations in Sweden are false. There's been no formal charges against him, and yet he's being held in solitary confinement. It's entirely unsatisfactory.
Just to make it absolutely clear, Jennifer Robinson, you have given assurances that Julian Assange has no intention of fleeing, that he's quite prepared to hand over his passport if he is granted bail in a couple of days' time.
Absolutely. We have put forward significant sureties. We'd had high-profile figures like Michael Moore, the documentary filmmaker, Jemima Khan. We had other high-profile figures like Bianca Jagger, John Pilger in court today. We offered hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of sureties. Plus, we have the history that Mr Assange has completely cooperated with the authorities from start to finish. And we suggested a number of bail conditions which were in fact quite stringent, including reporting to the police twice a day, electronic tagging, everything. But the Swedish prosecutor has said today in their appeal submission that absolutely no condition would satisfy them that he would not flee. The judge obviously disagreed, but we'll have to go to the High Court to determine that. But the conditions are outrageous. This is a man who is in solitary confinement without charge.
Jennifer Robinson, thanks for your time this morning.
You're welcome.